Good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Rincon. I'm the Artistic Services Manager here at Opera America. Thank you all for joining us for this Making Connections session. This session is also being streamed live on the Opera America homepage, so I'd like to welcome everybody that's joining us online. Before we get started, if people could please turn their cell phones off. Anything else that might make noise. And I wanted to let you know that we have two events here at the office before the end of the year. It's hard to believe that's almost the end of the year, but November 16th we will have a salon series performance featuring the music of Conrad Cummings. That's Wednesday, November 16th here at 7 p.m. And then we have a Making Connections session December 7th at 7 p.m. on acting resources for singers. So you can find more information about those two programs online or in the brochure that's on your seats with for our programs for artists for this season. You also have the program for tonight's session, which has Ms. Blythe's bio as well as the bio for Marc Scorca. And so without further delay, I will turn it over to Mr. Marc Scorca.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you for being on our website, watching the live stream. Several of you comment when you come into our office here that you think you're in our new space. And I just want to let everyone know that this is still the Opera America temporary space because we are in the process of constructing now the National Opera Center in this building downstairs on the 7th and 8th floors. And if you'd like to read more about it, we have some brochures right out front that describe what we're doing. But in short, we are creating a wonderful audition rehearsal facility, recording studio, vocal studios, and ensemble rooms so that anyone who lives here in New York or works in New York can have a properly designed total facility for their artistic needs under one roof, built specifically for opera. So feel free to take a brochure, read more about it. We are currently open for reservations on the spaces. You can go to the Opera America website to learn more about it. And we open officially on September 21 of 2012, but we'll be open for business from the beginning of September 2012. So for your auditions, your rehearsals, whatever your meeting needs may be, the National Opera Center is a resource for all of our members. Without further ado, it is a great honor and pleasure to introduce the incomparable, the wonderful Stephanie Blythe. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Please have a seat here.
Okay.
And we were listening to some glorious music that you recorded, and it was, of course, Wagner and Handel and American Song. And I was looking at a New York Times quote, "Ms. Blythe is nearly unmatched in a classical repertoire that ranges from Handel to Wagner," the New York Times wrote. And yet, if I think about it, your repertoire is even broader than that. I was thinking back to some of the years in the 1960s when Christa Ludwig sang Amneris and Fricka. She never sang Handel. Your repertoire, really, I don't think there's a precedent for it. How do you think of yourself as a singer, a Wagner singer, an Italian singer who sometimes sings Wagner? How do you think about your own voice?
I'm a girl singer. I think that there are enough categories in this life. We don't need to contribute to more of them. You just have a voice and you sing. I have a voice and I sing what's comfortable in my voice and what's healthy for it. And Handel is healthiest for it, so I sing that. And Bach is healthy, and all of those things are terrific. And I think that it informs the way I sing Wagner or Verdi. I always sing a big role better after I've sung an early music role.
Really?
Always. Which is why I'm really happy I go to Aida after this, after singing Rodelinda, because it's like doing calisthenics for a month. So when you have to go for the big stretches, you have it.
And if I recall, it was Nielsen who used to sing Mozart.
Absolutely.
In the middle of her Wagner repertoire.
Sure
she did Donana.
Yeah.
And you feel the same thing.
Absolutely.
The varied repertoire keeps you vocally healthy.
I sing a Handel aria to warm up before every show, or Pensa la Patria or something like that to some Rossini, because you've got to stretch the bands a little bit, in order to get them to really be warm, and that's the way you do it.
Well, what do you say to singers, or how do you understand those singers who just focus on a narrow repertoire, where they sing half a dozen roles or always the same composer? Do you think that's not good for the voice?
I think people have to do what is right for them. Just because this is the right way for me doesn't mean it's the right way for everybody else. I know a lot of really fantastic singers who've concentrated on, a handful of roles in their lives and really made a difference in that particular repertoire. Tenors, I know quite a few tenors who rarely leave Puccini and Verdi, who don't do recitals, who don't do concert work, and it's fine for them. If that works for them, great. I couldn't do that. I get bored very quickly, so I have to keep switching it up, or otherwise I don't feel comfortable. And I think that whenever I have a young singer who comes up to me, and I mean, what I'm saying right now is good for the colleagues that I work with presently, but if a young singer comes up to me, as one did last year, and I said to him, really terrific, lovely young tenor, tall, good-looking, I thought, wow, this guy is really needed in early music repertoire. This would be terrific. So I said to him, do you move your voice? Oh no, I don't do that. That's not my thing. And I laughed at him. I said, how old are you? Oh, 28. Really? There's no such thing as that. I don't believe there's a single singer today, regardless of who they are, that shouldn't sing music that moves. Regardless of whether or not they do that professionally, they sing these kind of roles. They have to sing and move their voices. Mm-hmm. It's what keeps them healthy. The healthiest voices, the ones that last the longest, are the ones that move, that keep a flexibility. And I challenged him. I said, go out. I said, just learn one. I mean, Mozart didn't write a lot of stuff for me. Mm-hmm. So I used to sing, I used to learn Tamino's arias. I would sing Tamino's arias I'm never going to sing Tamino, obviously. But it taught me a lot about the style. It taught me about legato in a different way. And it taught me to sing German in a different way. And it was very helpful to me. I did that when I was studying. I don't have the time I have to learn too many things that I actually sing now.
So you're not doing the male
I don't do,
anymore.
yes, I don't do the, although I'm still really dying for somebody to ask me to sing Siegfried. I would sing Siegfried. but the voices, young voices today it must be insisted upon. And I think that also the students have to insist on it. Because I've come across students who do not do early music because their teachers don't know the repertoire or are afraid to go to the repertoire because for instance, they have to play their lessons and they can't play that music. Mm-hmm. So find someone who does and bring them to the lesson, pay the extra money just to do that. Because it's a great exercise for everybody. It's great to teach it. It's every time I coach a young singer who's singing some Handel, I come out a better singer. Just 20 minutes working with a student because it reminds me of what I need to do.
Do you approach different repertoire differently in terms of your vocal approach to it?
No.
It is always your voice.
I had this conversation with Andreas Scholl just yesterday because he said exactly the same thing. Andreas sings tons of stuff that nobody would think about, and he believes exactly as I do, that you change the style, you don't change the voice. The actual technique is always the same. Yes, the style is going to be different. I'm not going to sing jazz the way I sing Bach. But you'd be amazed at how Bach informs jazz. You'd be amazed. Maybe you wouldn't be amazed. But all of this music informs each other. You just have to become very, very facile with the styles. Mm-hmm. But a supported, easy tone is necessary no matter what style you're singing.
Mm-hmm. So I hear you talking about the vocal health, but I also hear you talking about the artistic health.
Right.
That whether it's Kate Smith or Bach,
right,
that they speak to you and inform your artistry.
Absolutely. I think that if Kate Smith had had a teacher, which she didn't have and never really required, but if she'd had somebody who said to her, I bet you could sing this German art song really beautifully, I'd be willing to bet money she would have done it. Mm-hmm. She was never required to stretch herself in that way.
Well, we'll come to the Kate Smith a little bit later on. how do you decide whether a new role is for you or not? Again, we'll touch on it later in the wonderful NEA Opera Honors video tribute that you recorded for Spake Jenkins. You talked about the fact that he gave you 18 months to think about whether you wanted to sing Fricka. And here you're taking on Amneris at the Met. How do you decide that a role is one you want to take on?
Well, a role like Amneris, I tried out in 2 smaller houses before I moved into the United. I would never have started with that. I'm embarrassed that my first Azucena was a gun part. It never should have been. My first Azucena should have been in Phoenix or it should have been someplace where the amount of pressure that was on me wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was, and the pressure was there. It was great. I had a great conductor, fortunately, who it was very old-fashioned in that I had a mentor conductor that really mentored me from the part, and I will never sing it. I will never look at it the same way because I worked with Louis Sauty on that particular role. But Fricka, for instance, didn't come. It came around because Seattle offered me Aida, and I went to Maestro Levine, who was still very active with the artist program, and I said to him, "What do you think about me singing Aida?" He said, "How long will you have to be there?" I said, 3 months. He said, "You'll be bored to tears. Don't do Aida. There's not enough there for you to do." He said, "Find out if find out if there's something else you would like to do." He said, "Fricka might work for you." And when I told Spake Jenkins that I really didn't want to do Aida, he said, "What about Fricka?" And I wasn't even 30 years old yet, and I didn't really want to move into the Wagnerian repertoire because I knew as a large woman, I would very possibly be shutting the door on Rossini and Handel if I did that. And I had to work like a dog for about 5 years to make sure that this repertoire still stayed in the canon for me. But Spake was so generous with me and wonderful. And when he told me, I want you to sing your Fricka. I don't want to hear anybody. I don't want to hear a pale imitation of somebody else. I want to hear what you have to say about the character. And because of that, I was able to develop a Fricka that's very specifically mine, and I love that. I early on in my career, I was very stupid about some of my role choices because I was offered things. Like I remember I was offered Marchesa Melibea in Viaggio Arendt for Wolf Trap, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with this opera, but it is really virtuoso Rossini singing. And this part sat in the upper passaggio of my voice almost the entire time. I accepted the role without ever looking at it, which is idiotic. In hindsight, I'm glad, because had I looked at it, I would have said absolutely not. And then I would have missed out singing a role that I will probably never sing again, and actually sang pretty well. And it challenged me very much. Today I have to be careful. When I choose parts today, I'm more leery about productions, my colleagues, conductors, directors. There's so much that comes into whether or not you're going to do a part. If you do something you've done many, many, many times, it's not as scary as when you're taking a step into a brand new role and you have today you're much more likely to be stepping off a cliff to do that. So I think that it's more important to try things out in smaller houses.
Does it happen more often that there's a role you want to do and house is willing to do that for you?
Now, yes. Yeah.
But do you still get a call from your manager who says, "Stephanie, this may sound a little crazy, but this company wants you to do this"?
Yeah, that happens too.
So you get the score, you break the spine a little bit, and take a look, and what makes you say yes?
I have to look at. I'll borrow a phrase from my partner, my pianist, Warren Jones. He would always say, "Does this song race your motor?" We're choosing things. Does that race your motor? You're excited. If something doesn't really excite me, if a character doesn't really excite me, it's very difficult for me to go there musically, because I have to. It all has to be of one thing for me. The character and the music have to really be exciting, or have the potential to be exciting, despite whatever I might be asked to do in whatever production. And it's interesting, for instance, Edwige, which I'm working on right now, had I been asked to do this particular role in a different house, I might have said no, because she's sort of a cipher in other other productions. But Stephen Wadsworth and Harry Bickett, when we originally did this part, wrote a pile of new recitative for my character and added an aria, which fleshes out the character, so she doesn't just drop off the face of the earth. Now you actually know that something happens with her, and it's very, very exciting. But the music, where it fits, I basically knew very early on when something was right for me and when it wasn't. I will never sing Aida, never. It's not for me. I had the worst audition of my life singing that part. I knew in my heart that it was wrong, and I did it because I had said no so many times. I felt, well, if I don't say yes, then they might not ask again. It was stupid. But I was young and stupid. And I was asked to sing every high note that Aida Jesus sings in 15 minutes. And it just, by the time I got to Mira Norma, there was nothing left. And I thought, well, this is, I'm cooked. I was asked to sing Preziosilla. That part is, no. I mean, I'm not the first Mezzo to say no to that part. I don't think I'll ever sing Rodelinda. It sits in my passaggio break the entire time. It's just not the right part for me. And I knew early on that was the case. And I just don't feel that any role that you take on that fills your soul with dread should just simply not be taken on. There's no reason to do it. Life is too short.
That's a great role. You said that for 4 or 5 years you had to fight like a dog to hold on to some of the pieces, Handel or otherwise. What do you mean by fight like a dog?
Well, I mean, the thing is that sometimes we have to have more imagination than the people who hire us. It's just true. You have to put things out there that you think maybe this will never happen. Case in point, when I was in the Young Artist program, towards the end of my time in the program, actually I was probably on it by then, I was working on Gartered Bride. And we were taking a break, and I ended up talking with Maestro Levine for an hour out in the hall, just sitting in the seats and talking. Which was unheard of. I mean, you just never got that much face time alone. And the whole place was empty because everybody was at lunch, and the two of us just talked. And he said, I want you to sing Carmen. I said, nobody's going to hire me to sing Carmen. It's not going to happen. Why? I said, I'm too fat, and nobody's going to hire me. He said, there's no director who's going to hire me to sing Carmen. He said, Stephanie, do not decide what people think about you before you give them a chance to have a thought about you. Just be who you are. And and I did, and I have sung Carmen, and I will sing it again. I've sung it in 2 very successful productions, and he said to me, if you haven't sung this role in 10 years, I'll do Carmen for you. Fortunately, he didn't have to do that. I think he would have had a hard time selling it. But that comment never ever left me, because if you put limitations on yourself before anybody else has a chance to, I mean, you're just sticking yourself behind the 8 ball, and you're never going to get away from it. You have to have. I mean, when I did my first Met audition, my aria package was Baba the Turk's aria, Acclaimed le Militaire, Augusta Tabor's aria from Baby Doe, Dopo Notte from Mario Dante, which is 12 minutes of total coloratura hell. It's one of the hardest, and what she was my teacher was Regado. And Du bist der Lenz. That's what I sang. And in the audition, oh no, I'm forgetting. I didn't sing Acclaimed Militaire. I sang Amour vient aider ma faiblesse. They heard Amour, they heard Dopo Notte, and then they said, come back in 15 minutes and sing Du bist der Lenz. And my teacher's point to me was, you may never sing this aria. You may never be cast in Aria Dante. However, you've given them an idea of where your voice might go. Here's a possibility. If you sing Du bist der Lenz, you're showing them that in the future, you might go here. It was very smart. And when I actually went to the Nationals they suggested to take a woman off there and put something else in it, put some Italian on it, which I did.
Yeah.
And it was so smart. You just have to be. We don't live in a time today in the arts where individuality is celebrated. We just don't. We want to see, even in our own industry, we want to see the next Luciano Pavarotti. There is no next Pavarotti. Stephanie Blythe is the next Marilyn Horne. No, she's not. Stephanie Blythe is the first Stephanie Blythe. There is no next Marilyn Horne. There can be no next Marilyn Horne. We don't. Why it is so important for us to replicate what has come before is beyond me. We're inundated with people in pop culture who look and sound exactly like the last chick that came across the line. It's boring. So we have to be proactive. We have to go out there and demand, as artists and as audience members, I want something different. I don't want a soprano who sounds and looks like Maria Callas. I want a soprano who sounds and looks like herself.
You are blessed with a voice, one of those voices that is immediately recognizable, where, if I refer to old technology, you put the needle down on the LP, and in 1 second you know it's Stephanie
Yeah,
Blythe.
but anybody can do that. Anybody can have, yes. Listen, we do not, you've hit upon a very, very hefty subject for me. Because as somebody who's working with young singers today, we have to demand that young artists become, what's the word? They have to be unique and versatile and their own voice. They have to find their own voice. And I think that this is possible for everybody. It's not a matter of tone. It's a matter of how you use the voice. I'm singing with 2 countertenors right now. Now there are plenty of people who will tell you that if you drop the needle on 5 countertenor recordings, as I wish we could still drop needles,
right.
But I mean, if you did that, you'd have a very difficult time telling the difference between 5 different countertenors. It's completely untrue in the case that I'm working with right now. Andrea Scholl and Justin Davies could not be different. They have unique, authentic voices that are their own. Timbres that are, yes, extremely similar, but the way they sing a word, the way they shape a phrase, the way they attack a note is entirely different. And I really believe that authentic voices are everywhere to be found. We're simply not asking for it. Because it's much easier to understand a voice if you compare it to something else. Much easier.
And we're getting ahead here, but I love the topic. Today we train singers so much in groups. At the university, there are so many majors, and then you go to one young artist program, and there are 30 people who also sing chorus and do ensembles. And you go to another young artist program where there are 24 people, and they sing chorus and they cover roles. Where in the training process does the singer get nurtured as an individual rather than as a part of a group?
At the beginning, in the very beginning, it has to be something that's nurtured from the top. Now, I didn't go to a conservatory. I went to a liberal arts school. I have a liberal arts degree. I mean, my music degree came almost as an afterthought, and the only reason that I got a performance degree was that I had changed voice teachers, and I wanted to study with her for a year. And the only way that I could do that was if I went back to school and I got a degree. It was a means to an end because I didn't want to hurt my voice, my present voice teacher. So she was no longer teaching because she was very ill and elderly, and I didn't want to say to her, look, you're not helping me, and I love you. We had entered one of those relationships where you're more like the child of your teacher and less like the student. And I did not want to break her heart. So I had to find a way to study with a different teacher and not, so what I told her was, I am getting a degree and I have to study with someone who is accredited and teaching. And you can't do that because I can't get any course credit with you because you're not actually teaching at the school anymore. And I went to the dean of the college and I said, this is what you're going to tell her. And he did, thank God.
And it worked.
Yes, saxophone player. What was that thing with saxophone?
Who's the first person who said, Stephanie, you have a voice.
My high school choral. I told him I wanted to do famous contralto. He laughed at me and said, "There are very few of those here."
And how was it, as a high schooler,
You read the last life on it?
I did.
as a high schooler, how did you know that you wanted to be a contralto?
I didn't know that I wanted to be a contralto. I actually looked it up, and it looked cool to me, and I thought, I really didn't know it. I grew up in a very musical household because my father was a jazz musician who hated singers. And would come home from playing a gig and say, "Oh man, those singers, they sound so stupid when they're warming up." And then he would ask me when I was in college, "Why don't you ever sing at home?" I said, "Because you think singers are stupid." But I was very, very intrigued by things like Sergio Mendes in Brazil '66. I was very, very into that kind of husky-colored woman, female voice. I loved that. And I searched for that in classical repertoire, and that's where you find it. But he was the one who told
the high school choral.
He was the one who told my father that I had to study voice. My dad wanted me to be a flute player. So
Good breath.
Well, a horrible embouchure.
Yes.
And if you're a bad embouchure and you want to sing, then you have to stop playing. Because I was a TMJ case growing up.
And then to college as just a liberal arts major.
No, I was studying actually to become a music teacher because I was in love with my choral teacher. I thought that if I went to the same school he did and I got a degree in teaching and I became a teacher, that I could go back and he would fall in love with me and we would get married and we would teach together. He's gay. I just didn't know. I was very young. And so but because of that, I went to the school and I started studying I began music ed and realized after about a semester, a year and a half rather, that I really didn't want to teach. That I knew that someday I'd wake up and I would be colossally unhappy and I didn't want to do that because I knew that would make me a terrible teacher. So I went and I kind of got lost for a little while in marijuana. Gothic people, and that was very nice, but kind of a waste of time, but whatever. And then I found myself again in a college writing course, which taught me something about technique in a way that I never really understood technique. I always thought that technique was something that got in my way. It got in the way of the creative process. No, that's ridiculous. Technique is what gives you a creative process. If you don't have a technique, there's no way to build any kind of creation. You don't have tools. And I discovered technique by becoming an English writing major because I was a decent writer with no technique. And in order to say something real, I had to learn how to write. And that inspired me to learn a technique as a singer. And it made me a much better singer. And then I just was inspired to I thought, well, maybe I can actually do this. So I did.
Conservatory after
Nope.
college? Young artist programs?
I did the Met Young Arts program for 2.5 years. I graduated with my second degree in '92. I was 24 years old. I did the auditions for the Met. I did the auditions for Houston. Got into the Met. So I left school and joined the Met Young Arts program. It was really crazy. It was crazy, but very exciting and very fulfilling and terrifying. All of those things.
And a lot of Falstaffs at the beginning. A lot of big things.
Falstaff was a huge first step for me because I was covering Marilyn Horne when unfortunately Henry, her husband Henry Lewis, passed away that afternoon, the afternoon of the show. And they called me up. I was having a lesson, and they called me up and said, "Can you go on?" It was 2 hours before the show. I said, "Okay, sure." And I had a wonderful time. I remember every second of it because I told myself, don't forget any of this. Really remember what's happening. And it was a wonderful night. And I've sung it, I had sung it regularly for the first 10 years of my career, just about everywhere. It introduced me to almost every house.
And this spring, you are starting a pilot of a program of your own.
Yes.
Called the Fall Island Vocal Arts Seminar that takes place in the spring.
Yes.
And the language you use around it really speaks about the individual artist.
Absolutely.
What are your goals for the program?
Well, the reason I wanted to have a program was born of a lot of things. Number one, I found that there were not enough opportunities for young singers to learn about art song repertoire in summer programs. I came through the Tanglewood program in 1992 and 93 when there was no opera performed at Tanglewood. All we did were songs. Each one of us performed portions of 3 separate recitals, and if you were a fellow, you got to do a chamber work as well. And I learned how to sing by singing art songs. Much to my chagrin, Seiji Ozawa started doing opera at Tanglewood, and it made me crazy because I thought, now you are no longer choosing singers according to who will really be helped by your program, or who's really going to work on their voices. You're casting an opera. So 2 totally different things. And so I was there when Gil Kalish announced to the students at the end of a Phyllis Curtin class that they were going to do Peter Grimes the next summer. There wasn't a single happy face there, not one, because they all knew what it meant. And when Maestro Levine took over that program, I took a meeting with him and I begged him not to do opera. I just throw caution to the wind. Please don't do opera at Tanglewood, because you do enough opera. You don't have to do it there. And the reason I gave him was, look, there are people who were in that program, most people who did not go on to have vocal careers. They didn't. One of them is now the artistic director of the LA Phil. One of them is an agent. One of them, a couple of them are singers. One is a doctor. One is a lawyer. What changed them was that music was the discipline of studying art song, studying language, and learning how to communicate something to people. That was what was wonderful, and it changed them fundamentally as people, and made them better at whatever they did. And to me, that's reason enough to have a summer program.
So the song will very much be the focus.
It's the only focus, and only American song.
I was at the Maryland Horn Luncheon on Monday, and you spoke so eloquently about the connection through the song to the audience, with nothing distracting.
It's the best. Look, I don't think that the audience is going to get to know opera any better, but with locker room conversations in the middle of shows. What are they going to learn? They're not learning anything about the art. They're learning little tidbits about the singers. Well, I sang this here. How do you feel about that? I love it. What about that costume? Well, it's a little heavy. How is it? Is it easy to sing in Czech? No, it's not easy to sing in Czech, but I really love it. What's it like working with this? It's great. You don't learn anything about people, but I can tell you tons of things about singers whom I have seen in recital. Because if a singer chooses a recital that truly says something, and that they truly connect to, you will learn more about them as people than you ever would have learned just having a conversation with them. And I discovered that very, very late. I've been doing recitals, and I've sung recitals since college, and I love singing recitals. And I had, 2 years ago, I was asked to do a town hall recital in the summertime, and it was the very first recital I ever programmed myself. It was the first time I said to Warren, this is what we're doing. Because the guy's got an encyclopedic knowledge of music. And I never felt that I had not that I didn't have the right, but I felt idiotic because I just didn't know enough. I didn't have enough experience. But now I'd been singing for 15 years, and I thought, I have something I want to say. My mother had just died, and I had this group of songs that had been given to me by a friend on 12 poems of Emily Dickinson that were written by a wonderful composer named James Legg, who died very young, about 38. He wrote these songs for me and died before he had a chance to give them to me. So his partner gave them to me. He's a director named Jack O'Brien. And Jack gave them to me before we had ever worked together. And he told me the story behind the songs. It took me 7 years to find the right program for these songs. But being that I'd had this horrible experience losing my mom, these songs said something about that in a very, very powerful way. And I thought, now I'm ready to sing these. I have something to say about them. And I paired them with other things that I felt were, and I chose this program. And I did it at Town Hall. It was the best recital I had done to date, because there was something very personal about it. And a colleague of mine who never sings recital, he said, I didn't know. I didn't know you could actually say something with a recital program. And I thought, man, get on board, because there's lots of wonderful things to say. And it dawned on me that we don't teach that. That's one element of recital that's not taught in school. We say plenty about, we produce a load of singers who can do a Chinese menu recital any day of the week. A little from column A, a little from column B, a little from column C, and then we'll sing an American song at the end. But it's not, what it needs to be is authentic. It needs to be an authentic voice. And voices are authentic and real when they're saying something that means something to them, and they create something through the song that takes an audience to a place that they know. I've been there. I'm singing a song about something, and the audience member goes, wow, I've been there. I know what that feels like. And it's and art song speaks to the performer-audience connection in ways that opera simply can't. And it creates a relationship with artists and the audience like nothing else. And when I realized that, I thought, one of the things is that maybe singers like me weren't aware that they could take that risk and that they could take that jump. And maybe they just need to be told that they can do that. And I've been talking with my girlfriend Carlene Graham at Potsdam College about having an art song program for a long time. And she said, maybe this is the time to do it. So basically this program is about planting seeds, which is why I only want to work with singers who are basically out of graduate school. Because I want to work with people who are going to do it. I want to work with people who are going to be out there. Because I want to help singers understand that you don't just have a bag of tricks when you leave school. It's you've been taught by this person, you've worked with this coach, you've worked with this director, and you've worked with this conductor. Then you go into a situation and you wait for somebody to tell you to do something. It's the biggest waste of time. You have this incredible, you've amassed all of this knowledge. Now it's time to take a risk and be autonomous and bring something to the table. Because in today's opera world, if you don't bring something to the table, 99% of the time, no one is going to order for you. You know?
I think it's the word autonomous that struck me in your brochure.
Oh, yeah.
The autonomous artist.
Yes. You have to, we just need to take risks. Because if we don't, I talk about this with my colleagues all the time. We are the last quality control. We're the only quality control for ourselves. That's it. You cannot trust that anybody is going to make the right decisions for you. The only person you can really trust is you. You have a handful of people that you talk to and so on and so forth that you have to have. I have a group of people that I always shoot ideas with and things like that. But we have to be better than that. And I work with young artists coming into the business all the time. I had an experience working on a show last year. Wonderful young artist comes up to me and says, "The director hasn't told me to do anything. What should I do?" I said, "Something. Do something. If he likes it, he'll leave you alone. If he doesn't like it, he'll tell you he doesn't like it."
He's looking attention to it.
Exactly. Now, what does this have to do with art song? Well, the art song will make you brave enough to make that choice. Because in an art song, you are not replicating something generally. You're not replicating a performance that you've seen or you've heard. You're doing something that's authentic. And that's the word authentic is very important to me. And I think that learning art song is the last best way to do that.
The New York Times also wrote, on Wednesday night, she didn't coast through the lighter weights like Jerome Kern and Huey Charles. Approaching their work with respect, intelligence, and feeling, Ms. Blythe was in some ways an even better Kate Smith than Kate Smith.
Well, that's not true.
How did you develop this connection to the work of Kate Smith?
She reminds me of my grandpa. My grandfather loved the music of that time period. And whenever I was with my grandfather, who died way, way too young, I was 11 years old when he died, and I loved my grandfather. And whenever I hear that music, that's what I think about. And what I loved about Kate Smith is that she was an artist who didn't just sing; she spoke for a generation. Mm-hmm. She inspired people. She was remarkable. I mean, I could sit here and I could just go through my whole show and tell you everything all of the little bits and pieces I've learned about this person. But she was a remarkable person that goes so far beyond God Bless America. And it breaks my heart that she's basically disappeared. Because there's just nobody who really. I mean, if you go onto YouTube, the stuff that you see of her is like appearances on Donnie and Marie, and all of her different performances of singing "God Bless America." Her "God Bless America" was iconic, but what she did as a human being, she gave people, many people, the start of their career. She was one of the most important radio artists on the planet. When she was first put on the radio, she was put up against Amos and Andy. And she said, "You can't put me there because they'll cancel me immediately." And after a few weeks, they moved Amos and Andy because she was that popular. And it was that she was an authentic voice, and she found something that she wanted to say, and she got the music to do it. And she didn't always choose great repertoire. She didn't always sing the right. She recorded 2,200 songs in her lifetime.
Oh my goodness!
But she had a very, very strong viewpoint, and she was very true to herself and what she thought. And I appreciate that about her. I don't agree with everything she said. Certainly, her ideas about women in the home were not, wouldn't fly with most of us today. But at the time, she was remarkable, and I wanted very much, for a very long time, I wanted to do a tribute to her, and it was something that always sat in the back of my head. And then, the universe just opened up like it does, and there was all of a sudden there was this opportunity.
So many opera singers, when they sing songs like the songs that you sing from the work of Kate Smith, it still sounds like an opera singer trying to be relaxed. You do it as if it's just a second skin for you.
I think that the operative phrase is trying to.
Okay.
I just think that if you try to put something on music, and I don't care if it's Schubert or it's Puccini or it's Jerome Kern, if you try to put something on it instead of just honestly singing it with a supported free tone, then you're always going to sound like you're not real. It does, that's it. I can hear a totally legitimate opera singer sing that stuff if they sing it with a clean, understandable text, and lead with the text and a supported tone. It's always going to sound great to me.
You're remarkable. I've been privileged to hear you sing some of that at different events, and there's got to be a Cafe Carlisle engagement for you down the road.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'm first in line for a ticket.
No, the thing is I didn't know whether or not this Kate Smith show was actually going to fly. I didn't know if people were going to find it interesting, and they did. It found it very, very interesting. It turned out to be a very timely thing, and I now have a lot of opportunities to perform that around the country coming up over the next couple of years, and we'll do it again in New York. We'll certainly do it again in New York. I also have another pet project.
What's that?
Though, that I'm very keen to do, and I'll be trying that out in a couple of years, also with popular song, but engaging the audience to sing as well.
Wow.
So that's one of the things I've got on the back burner.
It's fantastic as an idea.
Well, I think that performing together, people singing together, this is something that creates communities, and we don't do it. The only time we ever come together as a community and sing is at the holidays, and even that is becoming taboo. So, we have to find an opportunity to all get together and sing.
At our sister organization, Chorus America, they also have an annual conference, and they start every morning with a group sing.
Why not?
At the conference, and it's quite an amazing experience to be there for. you are one of the few singers today who has a devoted public.
That's
people,
nice of you to say.
People,
I don't know about that.
Including me.
Oh,
that what you do, I will go see.
Oh.
Knowing that and recognizing that you have a great fan base, and I don't use that in a superficial sense, but people who are devoted to you. How do you think of your audience? What do you think of as the responsibility you have to your audience?
The audience is everything, and I don't think that we, I'm just a vessel. It's my job to bring this music to the audience. That's it. Long after I'm gone, this music is going to be performed. And I think that what is important for me to do is to bring something fresh and new to it, and to try to bring the audience into a space where they can have an experience. It does not, I remember once I was doing a New York Festival Song concert, and I was singing a song called I Am Not Prey by Richard Daniel Poor. And in the middle of this song, all of a sudden I realized that I was much more connected to this poetry than I ever thought. I realized in the moment of performing the song that I was the woman in the song. And it was devastating to me. And when I finished singing, I had to turn around and I was crying. And I got so upset with myself because I thought, these people do not know why you are crying. They don't have, and you're not teaching them anything about this song by wearing your heart on your sleeve. When you go out and you sing, you create something that makes them look at it and hear it and go, I've been there, I understand that. And that way when people leave, they've actually had an experience. For instance, I just did a recital that I'm starting to do around the country of American song that is featuring the James Lake, Emily Dickinson poems. And when I sing in English, I don't allow the presenter, or rather, I request that the presenter not print in the program any of the texts. Because I worked very hard to be understood, and I hate looking at a load of heads. I want to see eyes, because when I see eyes in the audience, it informs the way I sing, because I can tell, is this reaching you? Yes, okay, well then I'm going to sing this to you. But because the Dickinson poems are not easy, I decided I would recite them before we did the songs. So my pianist and I took turns, and we recited all 12 poems to the audience and then performed it. This was something that I had tried with the students at Tanglewood this summer. We did a Baudelaire project. We did all songs based on the poetry of Baudelaire, and I had other students come out and read the poem in translation before it was sung. So the audience was able to have a reaction to the poem, and then hear how the composer reacted to the poem. And it made a rapt audience, because they were experiencing the poetry.
Right from your mouth.
Exactly. And I remember one of the kids this summer recited this, the name of the poem escapes me. But I heard, because I was listening just off stage, I heard Phyllis Curtin say at the very end of the recitation, creepy. I thought, how wonderful. She has a feeling about this poem, and she hasn't even heard the song. And now she's going to hear the song in a whole new way. And I had people come up to me after this concert in San Francisco just a couple weeks ago and say, I had no idea. I knew I was going to hear a good recital. I didn't know I was going to hear such a great a poetry recitation. And they felt something about the songs. And what was so wonderful was that one of the students who took part with me in the Tanglewood experiment was doing a Milton Babbitt piece later on in the week. And I heard through the grapevine that she insisted on reading the poetry to the audience before they did the piece.
Do you read the poem as thoughtfully as you sing the
Absolutely.
poem? So you really are giving them a great reading.
Sure. I mean, we also did the James Joyce Opus 10. And how can you not read something like I Hear an Army with feeling? That poem is crazy. It's wonderful.
That is absolutely spectacular. This is just a wonderful resource. What we do is we record these, and they are available on Opera America's Career Guide, so that aspiring singers can log on and listen to this. And you have given so much advice for the young and established singer, I should say. It's just incredible to listen to you, and there are so many questions I could ask, but I know that Jose would get out the hook and drag me aside if I didn't turn to our guests here and see if there are any questions for Stephanie this evening. Yes?
You talk about the helping young singers, but what are your thoughts about the older singer who, has been singing for a long time but maybe didn't have the break but is still pursuing it and just as interested?
I'd say the same thing. I mean, maybe one of the things that can be, it's a frustrating career, and especially if you have been really plugging away at it and you're not making headway. I think that one of the things that really sets people apart is if they have something to say when they're performing. I mean, especially if you're going out and you're singing for people, you have to find a way to separate yourself out from the pack. That's all you can do. I mean, because if you're an older singer and you're trying to get into this business, the thing you're going to be struggling against is all the people that are 10 years younger than you, who are not as tired, and who are not jaded as much by the industry, because the industry it's difficult. But the way you separate yourself away from everybody else is if you come out and you sing well, and you say something with what you're singing. Because these people hear constantly the same arias day in and day out. You have to find a different way. Find something new. Be inventive. Be inventive. Don't put it on. Make it real. That's all I can say. I mean, I wish, the problem is when people ask me about how do I develop a career and how do I have a very difficult time helping people with that, because my career was so fast. I literally went from singing in a state university to singing at the Met. The Met was my very first professional home. And so developing a career and knowing how to do that is very, very difficult. But I think that the idea of finding something really authentic about yourself is the best way to go. I hope that's helpful.
It really is, and I have to say, I'm such a great fan because of that. I so see authenticity in you as a person and as a singer. So I'm a great fan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jose?
One question. You said that at the Fall Island seminar it's going to be all American art song, American composers. Was that to get for more of an immediacy?
Yes.
And also, I guess, exposure for the composers as well, or is it?
Well,
just
it
the
doesn't.
language?
It's not. The thing is that this festival, and I use the term loosely, is not about. We're going to put on a performance at the end of a week, but it isn't about that. There's going to be a lot of talking. There's going to be a lot of discussion. There's going to be a lot of introspective time for singers. I want it to be sort of like a boot camp, and a safe one that doesn't depend on how well you do in performance. And you're absolutely right. The reason I chose to do American Art Song is because the things that I want people to understand about connection, it will take less time if they're doing it in their own language. They'll be able to see it and feel it and hear it immediately. And that's what I want, because we're starting off with just a week-long program. The pilot program is very small. It's 6 singers and 3 pianists. That's it.
Fabulous. Yes.
I guess 2 things. First of all, I guess thank you for the hour, because one of the things as a singer that you get so caught up in is the career, and you forget the artistry. And that's something that you struggle with, and as everything in life, it kind of comes and goes in waves. And so that has specifically for me been a good focus, I guess. So thank you for that, and I know we all need to hear things like that. So, and you're one of the few voices that I think speaks to that we hear in this type of setting. The other thing is, in terms of recital work, I've always loved doing recital work. Do you find that there are more resources and more venues for recital work? Part of the problem as a singer is you very easily go broke presenting recitals because you're always paying for it yourself.
Absolutely. You can thank some of my colleagues for that, because their fees eat up all the money. You know, I personally don't believe that you can charge a real fee to do a recital. You can't. If you want to actually perpetuate the art, you have to take a cut. You know, you can't ask a festival that has a limited amount of funds to give them all the money they have, and then, you know, you can't make that kind of money. And I have plenty of colleagues who are, yes, 35,000 for yes, I get 50,000. Please, for a recital, it's harder work. It's much harder work. It deserves more money. But if we want to perpetuate the arts, then we have to start thinking outside of just our own careers. Yes, you're right. It costs an enormous amount of money. You don't make much. I'm very fortunate again. I mean, I've been given tons of recital opportunities in big recital venues. But when I first started out, I took anything that came my way. I sang in churches, I sang at community colleges, anybody that would hear. I went to a music education school, so I had a lot of friends who went off to teach in high schools and colleges, and they would ask me if I would come and sing for their kids. Yes. Any opportunity I had to try out new repertoire was wonderful. And then plant seeds along the way. I wish I could tell you that it's, you know, that there are more venues. You know, I think that I had one colleague once say to a group of us. She's now a colleague. At the time, she was a mentor. She said, "You can have a recital career. Just go out and take it. Sing wherever you." It's like, really? You're gonna be kidding me. You can't have a recital career. You can find places to sing, yes, but to sustain yourself, it's better if you pair it with things like big concerts, you know, singing orchestral concerts and things like that. But it's very, very difficult. Despite that fact, you still need to do it.
Are you finding that the audiences are growing? Is that
I find my audiences are growing. I can't speak to all of my colleagues about that, but I do find that my audiences are growing, and that's very, very comforting.
Well, we have had this wonderful hour, truly inspiring, and I thank you for your words of insight and encouragement. We have some light refreshments, and hope you will stay for a few minutes and join us for that. Stephanie Blythe, when you're in it, I call the opera Omneris. So I hope that...
You know, he almost did too.
So I hope that Omneris and Rodelinda and the Ring Cycle are a huge success for you this season.
Thank you
We're
very
so glad
much.
You're here in New York through the year.
Thank you.
And wish you the very best of luck. Thank you so much.